Hi, I'm Donna Dewberry, the original creator of the FolkArt One Stroke painting technique. I'm in the Let's Paint studio today doing another wreath of the month, and this month is June. So the June wreath I'm going to do is on this beautiful birch plywood surface that's ready to hang on your front door when we paint it today. So the birch plywood has either holes drilled so you can hang it at a diamond or a square. And by the way, if you painted February, you can turn this over and paint June on the other side. Now, if you would like to get these surfaces so you could paint your wreaths with me each month, they're on plaidonline.com, so go check them out. And I decided this month to paint my flowers inside a container and put that container painted into the wreath. And for a bit of sunshine, I decided to put a little glimmer in my wreath with treasure gold. So come join me in the studio and let's paint. Thanks for joining us in the studio today. I'm so thrilled to be sharing with you a fun wreath that's kind of different. It's square, so that's going to be fun. And I'm going to share different details, and I want to tell you a little bit about how that happens. And some of the things that are going to be important to you as you're learning this wreath. It's full of zinnias, isn't that great? I love that color. Well, the first thing I do is the background, and so can you see the light in here? I have a light going and it's glowing is what I was looking for. And I kind of ombre color, which means I went from this lighter shade, a little bit darker with the yellow ochre and the Pueblo, and then all the way out to burnt umber on the edges. So one of the things that is fun too that we're going to be learning about the wreaths is this is a different wreath than we did before, because I added not only some burnt umber and Pueblo in the background before I painted my grapevine, but I also added some greens, so it looks like we got kind of moss under here, which lend to more depth as we're adding the wreath on here. We also used some treasure gold, which is really fun, and put that all into the wreath and even into our container. So let's talk about that container. I wanted to put something in the middle of the wreath that was different than what we've done before. So as we worked on this, we came up with this long container full of flowers. And so as you're doing the container, I even put some gold in that, shading it to make it look a little older. And then we're going to put our leaves. When we're working with leaves, we have lots of different colors, from whites to bright greens to dark greens, and that's what gives you lots of depth. So I think you're going to enjoy that part of it. And then the fun part to me is taking a simple chisel stroke that we usually make little daisies and do more pressure on each stroke all the way to less pressure. So we're going to layer. See how we layer the petals? Sometimes there's 5 layers there. So with alternating colors, we're going to layer with the chisel edge of the brush and show you some fun technique that way. Then to finish it off, I thought it was fun to come in here and do some little berries. So I'd like you to see it with and without, and I think you'll see too, as we pop in our centers and add the berries, it's going to really add to our piece. So, are you ready to get started? So now what I've done is I've chosen a neutral color of your FolkArt multi-surface, which has a sealer in it. So that's going to give you a nice clean finish. Now what I did first is put 1 coat of this neutral color, let it totally dry, and when it dries it brings up the green of the plywood. So what we're going to do then is we're going to let, when that dries, is we're going to take sandpaper or your sanding block and we're going to sand off that raised green so that it's nice and smooth. And then we're going to dust that off so we're ready to put our final coat of base coat, and that would be a second coat that all you have to do is let that totally dry. All right, so let's jump into how we're going to start the background. Now I have shown you here some of the different steps on your worksheet that's going to help you figure out the colors I used and how I added them to our wreath. Okay, so I'm using FolkArt multi-surface again, remember, and we've got Pueblo, yellow ochre, wicker white, burnt umber. I put a little floating medium in case we need to smooth out some of our blending. Now, the first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to pick up my painter's sponge, and I'm going to use this side of the sponge, not this side. I'm going to take my fingers in water, and I'm just going to lightly wipe some water on the sponge. Please don't saturate the sponge because it'll make it bubble up and look watery, and it will not give you the finish we're looking for. So the first thing I did was I picked up the yellow ochre and some wicker white. Now I started in the middle. You're going to want to go right here in the middle because I wanted the glow. All right, I want you to have that glow in there. All right, now a little trick is that you want to keep moving because if this starts drying and you're rubbing into it, it'll lift paint and leave spots. So just keep going. I'm going to pick up a little bit more, and now I'm going to rub this way. So the sponge is blending right here, and the darker color is going out there. So see how the whole sponge is down? And as we're doing this, we can just keep adding color. And I called it ombre. It's kind of blending from light to medium to dark, but we're going from the center out. So I'm going to pick up a little bit more of yellow ochre and the Pueblo. Now a lot of this on the outside is just going to enhance your grapevine by having those darker shades. I'm going to get the white, wicker white, and yellow ochre again and come down here. I like to put it, even if the container is going to be there, I like to do it underneath everything so that in case it doesn't happen to cover it, you've already got a color there. You're not trying to put it later. Okay, so it's really smooth feel when you're doing this. Should feel like butter when you're moving it around. So most of you, when you're working with doing a finish, well, I've noticed that you seem to do it really dry, and then that's not gonna get the finish you want. So put extra paint on there, okay? So see how I'm getting darker as I go? Real important that this is blending for you. All right, now let's take Pueblo and let's do burnt umber. All right, so you see I'm keeping it on the tip, and I'm gonna come right in here. Same thing, never turn this around, please. Keep this on the outside because then you could tap it if you've got circles that you don't like. Because if you do just circle motions, just come and tap those out, okay? A little bit of pouncing. And then I will come in here, remember, I'm going to put some greens and different colors in the background to just make it even darker. And when you're all done, actually, you could come, if it wasn't totally a shade you want, I could show you later that we might even come with floating medium and intensify this outside edge. You also, when you're done, can take and paint the outside edge of this the darker color. But we're just going to keep going around our wreath. Now that I have the base down, let's design our container that's going to go in the sitting in the wreath, leaving space here for my wreath, but I want it nestled in. So I'm kind of going like 4 fingers out over here. See, they're loose fingers, not tight, and about 4 there. So the most important thing is that it's kind of spaced in here good. All right, then I could decide I want it about 4 fingers deep. All right, so I'm going to come down and get your bottom, and then I curved this one for this container, and across the top's covered with leaves and flowers. All right, so I am going to go back and put the color in, which the color is right here on your worksheet. So this is color 1, and then we could even work a little bit of color 2 in, but we're going to let it dry while we make our background for our grapevines before we float this dark brown. So it shows you all right here what we're going to do. So right here it's the yellow ochre, and then we put Pueblo over it. So I've also put out some paint here for the background that we're going to be slip slapping. So first of all, before I start going there, I want to pick up my 3/4 flat and see how I go on the edge of the puddle of the paint. And I'm going to come around and fill this all in. Follow the shape of the container. Now I might want to go just a little bit lower. So go over it a little bit if the chalk is not letting you get a nice smooth stroke. Just go over it a little bit. It doesn't hurt the paint. Okay, so we're going to come down here on the chisel. Then it's easier to make our stroke. So I like to get the shape first, then fill it in, back and forth. And this is a little thick, so I can go into a medium a little bit, the floating medium, if I want it to move a little more. Now, I don't have to get it absolutely perfectly smooth with the yellow ochre because we have 2 other colors that are going to go on here. So we've worked this in. See, slip, slap, get a little texture in there. Then I'm going to come over here and just grab some Pueblo. Slip, slap, see? Back and forth. I think it gives it some character, which I like. Movement. When I say I wanted to see those strokes, because it gives you a little bit of movement. Back and forth like crisscross. Okay. So let's go back to our worksheet and let's look at what we're getting ready to do. I'm going to take the yellow ochre and the Pueblo that's already on my brush, and I'm going to pick up some burnt umber and some light greens and dark greens and alternate those as I'm adding those all around the outside, where I'm then going to put the grapevine on top. All right, so we're going to go back to grab the burnt umber. We're going to do the slip, slap, back and forth. So I want some dark areas. I still want some light areas. And I keep going back and forth as I do that. But it's nice right now to pick up some of the light green or just get both of them on the brush at one time. And then come in here and add some of these back and forth in here. And I do come back a little bit later and just put more of just the bright green and sap green. So we have happy green and sap green. Slip, slap. So it kind of looks mossy behind. So I think this makes an interesting look. And it makes your grapevine look good and fuller without putting a lot of grapevine. And each wreath that we do, we're going to show you different options and colors to make your wreaths all a little bit different. Okay, so I went around that much, and then see, you can see as I'm picking up the 2 greens, I don't clean the brush. I have the dirty brush full of the other colors I've used, and I'm just coming in here and for interest put some of that mossy look. Back and forth, crisscrossing, slip slapping. And so I don't want it exact, so sometimes right here I could add the medium a little bit and get a little bit of that green, and then I can work from there into here a little bit, into the center just a little bit with some greens. So I just kind of work all that paint off my brush and then go get some more color. I'm going to go into some of the grapevine with that treasure gold, which I like this down here being a little bit darker, so you'll see that. Okay. There. Now that is dry enough, I can clean my brush, and I'm going to float some burnt umber. So this is what I want you to see. I'm going to dry this brush well. I'm going to pick up in the puddle of medium. It's totally clean, the 3/4 brush. As long as I have some good fresh paint here, I can just stroke next to it. If not, go get fresh paint. So, but you have to have a spot next to it to float. So you're going to pick up paint on both sides. On both sides of that one corner. All right. So see, we're going right up next to it. Do not dip it. You're going to side load it. So side loading is totally on one side, and see how it comes across on here. Now I show you right here the way we want that to look. So we've got the yellow ochre, the Pueblo that we slapped in there, and then now the burnt umber. And so you can shade under it, but I chose to shade on the top edge of this, and I can curve right there. See how that makes a nice float around the edge, back and forth to work it in, but really make sure this is dry because it's on the verge of not being dry enough. The floating medium and the burnt umber. So see how nice it blends up. Shades from really dark on the dark edge. And then it gives you some depth there. So now we're ready. I know that looks a little short, but when you put everything on top of it, it's gonna look just right. I've even come in here with some treasure gold. So I'm gonna get my palette and bring this over where I've already got it loaded. And I'm going to pick up a little bit, while I've got this color on here, we're gonna pick up just a little bit of treasure gold. And it used to be solvent based, but it's water based, which is wonderful. So you can use it right in here with the acrylic and wash it right out of your brush. So I'm gonna come in here and right on top of this pretty color I put here, I'm working in the treasure gold. Now, because I already have some acrylic on here, as I'm dipping into that treasure gold, it's just gonna give me a pretty luster, but it also is working it in so it just doesn't look like I put treasure gold on the whole piece. It's gonna give you movement also. Okay, there we go. Now that's ready, and now we're ready for our grapevines. All right, now I think you're gonna think the grapevines are really fun because they're very simple. We're gonna take the same brush, so we haven't changed our brush, and we're gonna pick up the burnt umber and wicker white. So I'm gonna go right here and pick up the two, and I'm gonna go right to a single spot and work it in. So I split the brush here, and I'm working it into each other, but in a controlled area right here. All right, now I don't want it just to be white and burnt umber, so I'm gonna pick up some yellow ochre on the white side. All right, and occasionally I'm gonna go pick up some treasure gold on that white side. Just give it a little bit of character. Or you could pick up Pueblo. So see, you're just working that in. And then I want you to see that it's right here on your worksheet. So what I do on the worksheet at that point is I will just practice. Now, when you're practicing this, I want you to see that we're gonna take this brush up, we're gonna tilt it, and we're gonna drag ever so lightly those back bristles. Now, this means lightly, not this, because then see it fans out. And fanning out a little bit's okay sometimes, but that's not what we want. We want a nice thin end to our branches, okay? And that's how you're gonna do it. And so you're gonna lead with a lighter color because whatever follows, see this color following? Whatever follows is the prominent color that you're gonna see. As you can see, it's burnt umber, all right? So these are reusable with a lamination on here. And so we want to wipe it off. So we're ready to, I kind of make an eraser with my with my paper towels so I can erase it easily. Those were wet wipes, but I like to come right in there and wipe those. Okay, so let's start with our branches around our little grapevine around, not branches, but grapevines. All right, so we're gonna come right in here, and we don't need medium at first. We should have enough paint on here that we don't need that. Okay, so I'm gonna come around and I'm gonna start with a nice smooth wave. So we're gonna pick up paint and come back and continue around a nice loose wave. Now what I'm gonna do, I'm gonna keep picking up more when I leave and go away. I'm flattening the brush and picking up more. Now what happens here, let's look right here as we're doing this. We're gonna now start on this side and wander up. I'm gonna get more paint this side and wander around. So it's a nice loose wave. And don't worry about little pieces like that, because as we're adding the branches, they get all covered. Now I might just need to dip the burnt umber and just the yellow ochre when I need more paint. And if I really am worried about it going around smoothly, I can dip it just straight into the medium. Only do that every about 2 or 3 strokes, okay? You've got to wait so you don't make it muddy. All right, so look how fun and easy that is. See, I don't see it there. So I might flip the brush and get a little bit lighter when it's really dark, because what's following is the predominant color. That's the color you're gonna see. So all the way around, and I make it nice and smooth. I don't make it super wiggly. Not like this. That's what happens a lot. We don't want that. We want it nice and loose. So we start on this side, cross over, start on this side, cross over. And you notice that my handle of my brush is standing straight up, tilted slightly in the direction away from where I'm headed. So I just like to start on one side and come over, and the one thing that you don't want to do is everything doesn't come from one spot. Every vine doesn't come from one spot. Grapevines, they grow off of a vine and off of that vine. So that's all you have to do, is go around. Now you decide how many vines you want in there. What I do is I'm coming around here and adding a few, and then I decided to go to the treasure gold. So I can grab some treasure gold. I'm gonna work it in at first, but then I'm just gonna pick up some. And I'm gonna come right in here and loosely, see this? I realize that I'm not happy with all the white, so this is easy. I'm gonna take off some of the white, and then I'm gonna go back and get some gold and brown again. Brown, a little bit of gold. Burnt umber and treasure gold. And so I'm really loose. See how I'm just kind of loosely adding that gold? It doesn't have to be perfect. You don't want it to be. You want it more earthy and natural. So it's following. The gold's following. And unless you're in the light, that's not jumping. See, you might not see that as bright as it is. Or you might, depending on the light. But then when it's hung on your door, you're gonna love seeing that. Now what I did was I'm going all the way around with the gold, and you know, notice all I have to pick up is the gold. I'm coming all the way around, and the wreath's following around this way. Because what we're gonna do now is I wanted some of this in here, but I wanted to have brown little vines over it too, so it's just not laid on top. I want it to look like it's mixed into my wreath, okay? So see that? I also, and I'm gonna go back again to, let's do the yellow ochre and the burnt umber. And see, you go right back to your same spot to work that in. Okay, so now all I want to do after this is take some nice little branches that cross over the gold here and there. The treasure gold, this is burnt umber. And it just gives it a little bit of character, I think. And then see, I'm right down here, I'm pretty much done with my vine. But I'm going to continue that all the way around. So there we go. Now, doesn't that look like it's ready? This is some of it that you don't see when you're just looking at your wreath. But when it's all done, that gives us the richness. That's how we attained that and got to this point. So I think it's important that you see how you build it. We're building from the back to the front. All right, so now let's go back and look at what we're going to do next. We're going to go to the leaves. So I like laying in my leaves, and that helps you so you don't have to trace the pattern. What you're able to do is lay the leaves like they're growing in the container and some up in the wreath. And I'm doing an L-shaped design. So I'm heavier across here, and then I popped a couple up in the corner just to make it pretty. But let's look at these great leaves. Now what happens with these is this is 2 colors and then we add white. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to use my sap green and my happy green, and what I've done is I've cleaned my brush, I've laid it on the paper towel to get the excess water out, and now I'm going to split the brush in between those 2 colors, and I'm going to go here and work it in. Now I'm going to go quickly back and forth, and what that does is not because I want you to be fast, but if you're quick, it works it into the bristles. All right, so it's inside the bristles, and I'm pushing hard enough that it gets 2/3 up the bristles. All right, so now what's going to happen is I can go get more paint and not push hard. Just put it on the surface, okay, and blend the surface. And if you pick up the wrong paint by accident, don't worry about it, because all you have to do, look, I'm picking up the green and I didn't mean to, so I go right over here, the dark green, and wipe it, and it's still right inside. Okay, so I can just pick up. Now if I happen to need medium, we got enough paint on here, we probably won't. You just dip here and go 1, 2, and you're ready to paint again. But what I want is a little bit of white. So I'm gonna dip my white, see how I picked up the white? And I'm gonna come over here and work it in. So every time you see me go away and get more paint, I'm usually going right here. Or I might just be dipping the light green and going here. I just have to flatten it after I pick it up, okay? So we're gonna have our eraser ready. So I just folded my paper towel and dampened one corner. And then I'm gonna come here, and there's a couple different leaves here. This is an easy one to start. See this arrow right here? All right, so we're gonna go right here, and we watch the outside edge, and the first time you stroke on here, I want you to go slow. So I want you to see that I came right here, and then I'm gonna make it lighter later, but this is the color I wanted to do. So I have a nice blend, and you wanna see that blend, and that's what those strokes are for. You can see here I didn't push down enough. If you push half sprung, and then you do the stroke, you're gonna feel that whole stroke. This side, I just did smooth. Let me show you this. On this side, I started here. See the angle I need to start, and then I smoothly stood up. So you're gonna put those 2 strokes together. Now let's look at this. I'm gonna pick up a teeny bit more white on this stroke, more like the sap green and wicker white, and I'm gonna make a loose wave on that. So it's easier to turn around, it's okay to turn around. And then I'm on that line again, so I push down, half sprung, my brush handle straight up, and I'm going to make those little waves. So this is what I want you to do. The first time you stroke it on here, I want you to go very slow. It's gonna look better when it's quickly stroked, but I want you to feel every move, and it's not this, and it's not smashing it down. It's a nice smooth, let's wipe those off. So on this side, this is how you're going to make a heart leaf. All right, so I'm going to start here. We also have the V there too. So here's your V. You could try to make sure the stroke looks right. You're going to go right here. And I want this light edge to stay right there as you're standing it up. Now we start on the chisel. We half sprung. The brush is halfway down. Right here's a magnet, and every time you come out, it pulls you back to that. See that? And that's kind of like a fan from here to here. So if you wiggle, see how that light green stays there? Now stand up, stand up, stand up, and slide. So by the time you put these two together, on both sides, then you have to stand the brush up like we're doing the grapevine and slide only halfway in. Okay, only about halfway in. So make sure that you wipe this up before we start painting. But all we're going to do now is change colors, do the same kind of strokes, and change colors while we're doing it. So we're going to wipe that off, and let's start painting our leaves. Okay, so now what we're going to do is, I have a little bit muted leaf over there. So there's a couple things we can do. We can add a teeny bit of brown even to the dark, the burnt umber to the sap. So we're going to pick up some wicker white on the light color, this happy green, and work that in. So I'm going to keep working it in until I've toned it down a little bit, because I don't want bright, bright leaves. So you just keep working it till you blend the color in. All right, so now we've got a color kind of in between those two colors. All right, and if you want to, you can pick up a teeny bit on just the one corner of that leaf, of the floating medium, because that might be the corner that's dry and doesn't move for you, okay? So the first thing I'm doing on here is I'm laying this down, and remember, it's just a smooth stroke. And over here, oops, I need medium on that dark green now, on the sap edge. And there we go. And make sure you pull the stem like 2/3 in. All right, so I'm gonna move my palette back over here, and I want light now. So I'm gonna come right in here, and see I'm right on the edge of that flower. And I need a little bit lighter showing. See this? I still have to get more. There we go. So you just keep picking it up till it's a color that you're happy with. Okay, and we're gonna come right in here. I also have flipped this brush. You'll see that in the project that I did. So I took the white and then just went right over like this and stroked that side. So it just gives you a little bit of interesting color there. All right, so on the other side of this zinnia, I'm going to have the light on the outside too. I keep going over there and stroking it. So we're going to come right there and right against the flower. We don't need a V when you're right against the flower for your starting stroke. All right. I'm going to pick up just a little bit of a happy green and a little sap green and work it back in again. Right up here I had another small. And remember, I slid one side on the worksheet. So just keep going back to the worksheet and have it right in front of you, because that helps you remember what you did. I do have a flower that's way out here, and so I came out on the edge here. See, I still don't need medium. I've got plenty of paint inside this brush. There we go. All right, so I have these. Remember I said I'm going to come over here. I need a triangle of leaves, of large leaves. Now, if you notice, I'm doing all the large leaves. And what happens, I'm going to keep blending this in a little bit. What happens is that kind of is the first thing I go and do. I do my large leaves, come back with my little leaves, and filler, put the little flowers, and then the little leaves, or fern, or whatever I'm doing. All right, out here, I'm gonna have 1, 2, here's the big one. So we're gonna put this here, and I need darker. And you know right away if you're going to need it. I'm going to put a teeny bit of medium on the dark edge, the sap green edge, and I'm wiggling too much, so let's make it smooth. All right, now let's come over here. And it's okay to turn. I'm not turning my wreath much because I'm right under the camera, but it's okay to pick your wreath up and turn it. That's the most asked question by my students is, can I turn it? Of course, you just can't turn a wall if you're up on something that's stationary or a piece of furniture. Okay, so I overlaid just a little bit this one. So I want a couple coming from this yellow. This was another one of the yellow flowers. So I'm going to keep going. Just make sure when I pick up, see I've gotten some really dark. Remember that we're just going to work this in until it's not just dark green. Back and forth, back and forth. And usually I like a dark, but on this one I thought they looked nicer when they're a little bit more muted. Just practice your worksheet and just keep it right there with you. Go over it a couple times if you feel like you need to. And stand up and pull a stem. Okay, so I have them all in here. Now I'm going to go up on, let's just keep going up here. All right, so I did have some lighter color up here. I'm going to fill in some more leaves all up in here, and you can watch and see how I'm laying these out. Okay, I want to put some stems up here. And what's going to happen with these stems are they're coming behind. And then I should have put it right here, so let me show you. This is when I decide where am I going to put this. Then it's very easy while that's still wet to come right here and go over it. So that puts that leaf back on top of that stem. I'm going to wiggle down, and then you can slide back up. Okay, so now that we have a layout of some of the leaves, we have lots of other leaves later. Like I said, I might put a couple of one-stroke leaves on here, which I usually do the little leaf with a 12, but you could push down and stroke one or two in there if you wanted to. All right, so let's start working on our zinnias. And the first thing I want to do is just layer one that's got tons of layers. And that's going to be this little guy right here in the middle. So what I'm going to do is go back to some of these strokes I want you to see. So I'm up on the chisel. Let me get my 12 and show you. I'm up on the chisel and I'm barely pushing. Then I push a little bit harder down and then stand up. So the key is you're standing up, you lean slightly the bristles, and you pull. So when I'm here, I'm pushing way hard, a lot more pressure, and then I stand up. All right? So it's easier to do when you have paint on the brush, so that's what I want to start with. The first thing I did on this large one is I used yellow ochre and moon yellow around the outside edge. So that's easy because I've got it all started here. Usually I will put a circle, like that's where I'm headed to, so you don't have any doubt. But this time I made a big circle so you know like where we're going. And so now we're going to pick up moon yellow and yellow ochre. I have a little bit of yellow ochre, but I want you to see if I put them next to each other. I can go dip and get it and come over, but I just kind of like to show you that. And what about some clean wicker white? So I put a little bit of clean wicker white right there. I tap the double loader and then you can see the colors are next to each other, so you can grab them easier, all right? So remember, I'm using these two. My 12 flat was wet. I laid it on the paper towel and I'm ready to pick up, all right? Then I need to have a spot where I'm gonna work this in. So I'm picking it up and I'm working this in. Okay, so now I'm just gonna come over here and pick up each time. So I can move that over a little bit, and that's like half and half. Sometimes I'll say 2/3 one color, 1/3 another. Now, what I like to do first is I'm leading with a lighter color. I'm gonna touch out here, and I'm gonna push hard, lots of pressure, and pull in, all right? So as I'm going around the outside here, I realized I don't have enough light, so I might come back later and float some white, but I'm gonna go all the way around. But let me show you what I like to do. I like to make a clock. So I do 12 o'clock, 3 o'clock, 6 o'clock, and 9 o'clock. Now I'm finding out that my yellow on this background is looking better following. So I led with the yellow ochre. See that? That looks way better. Okay, so now what I want you to see though, guys, as we're doing this stroke, the most important thing about stroking daisy strokes is that we're gonna push pressure, lots of pressure, and then immediately start lifting, because I do not want this solid stroke all the way down. You need to lift each time and it gives you a better look. So just remember that. We're gonna pressure and then lift. Immediately after you do your pressure, push, lift, push, lift. Now you see that these are too short? It's really important as you're going around to keep your structure is that you have to be out here, because we're going to be layering, and if it's too short, we can't get all of our layers in. And if you're not happy, I can come in here. See, this one's kind of the one I went long to use an example. See, I just stroked back over it. So all I'm doing constantly is picking up the two colors and pulling them in and pulling them in. So I want to show that palette to you again. I'm going to pick up both colors and then stroke. So what I'm doing in between those, you can push one in between or just stagger two in between that space, depending on how much room you have. But that works all the way around, okay? So the chalk will wipe away when it's totally dry. Now we're ready to take and wipe this color off, but we're still going to be using the moon yellow. So we take the moon yellow and we're going to get the white. So I wiped it off. I didn't need to wash it in the water. I'm going to come over here and just pat this down. So wicker white, moon yellow, and then I'm going to keep picking up here every time. Now when I practice this one, this is the one, I've got to flatten that after I pick it up, so I want it flattened. I'm going to touch, lean, and then lift. All right, so I'm not making it super teeny, all right, but I'm pulling that. Push, lift, and I'm pulling with the handle of this brush straight up and down. So I'm coming right on top of here, and it's wet on wet. I'm going, remember, I've got 1, 2, 3 layers to go. So I can come in here and get the skinny layer, but I'm gonna do right up here first. Remember up here where the 12 is? So all I'm gonna be doing is picking up white. And I'm gonna kind of come over here where the 3 is to balance it out, and the 9, and the 6. All right, so there's still a daisy stroke that's gonna be skinnier than this, thinner. All right, so now all I'm doing is I'm working these around. So this, look, I touch, lean, pull, 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 and just concentrate on all of those being the same length. You can see we got some a little bit longer, so we can go out a little bit longer, only because I'm worried about the other 2 layers showing well, okay? So you can alternate, have some a little bit shorter, some a little bit longer. And literally just picking up white because look how much yellow I still have. Okay, so that's easy. I like to use the red and the pink, which is a bright pink. All right, and then the apple red. I'm going to put these separate, and what I will do is show this to you on my foam plate as I'm loading this. All right, so I'm going to pick up the pink and the red, and I'm going to just work that in. It's got a little bit of yellow in it from what's in my brush, but that's okay because it pulls it all together. All right, so red, and this is kind of like, it reminds me of a neon pink. It's really a pretty bright pink. Okay, so on top of here, what I'm going to do is these are these short little strokes. So I did the white, now I'm doing this pink, and then I'm going to do a little bit of white with Pueblo just to change it up a little bit. So now these are skinnier. These are the little thin little strokes. So I still have another layer after this before the center. So I want to leave that center, and I'm gonna, this is enough to probably go all the way around. So you can still do the clock now if you feel more comfortable, but it's pretty easy to stagger in between those. All right. Now let's wipe this paint off my brush. I'm gonna wipe it off. I'm gonna pick up Pueblo and white, work it all in, just because I wanted different shades. And I think when it was all done, it was fun to see the different shades. All right, so I'm going to come right in here, and the white's got to be fresh. All the way around. See, there's short little strokes. All right, now when we're all done, we're going to put the center in all of the little flowers, and that's with a small scruffy. But I want to jump over here and do these 2. Now these 2 flowers are going to be using the same colors, but we're going to do less layers. So this is like a hybrid, a fancy one. And then we're going to go out here and maybe use just the yellow and yellow ochre. So see how fun that is? You're just going to come back in here, heavier pressure but lift. What I was saying before is you can decide right here and right here to fill in, just 2 strokes in between, or I put 1 in the middle sometimes and then fill in between those 2. So this one definitely could use 1 in the middle, and then 1 here and 1 there. So you notice I'm picking up paint every stroke. And you want that paint to be really loaded on that brush, so when you go over the greens and the leaves, it covers it well. All right, so now all we did on this one, for right now, we're going to do some little tricks to make it look really good. But right now I am picking up the white because it's going to show And I'm coming right in here. I'm gonna take off some of the yellow. I had too much yellow because it wasn't showing. See, all I did was wipe it on the paper towel. And then look how fun that is. I keep coming over to my palette and just grabbing more white. You see that right up there? More white. Now in the center of this, I put a different center and I floated around, and those are the finishing touches. I floated around the center and gave it a little bit of pink, but we don't want to do that right now. We want that to totally dry because you cannot do any centers till we do that. And then we're just going to repeat that same flower over here. And the only other little ones that we put, I'm going to show you later as I'm doing the little teeny pink, bright pink ones. All right, so we'll come back in a few minutes and we will start doing the Pueblo zinnias. Okay, so I finished the second flower that was a repeat of this flower, and I'm waiting to do my centers like I said, but I needed to clean up and get a fresh palette and fresh paper towels. So this is what I want to share with you about the rest of the flowers we're doing. So we've got apple red, we have the bright pink, wicker white, and Pueblo, and that's going to be the next flower I'm going to work on. Then we're going to do some pink and white flowers and some yellow smaller flowers also. So let's start with our pink, and I'm going to take the chalk and tell you where this one's going to go. It kind of fits right in here and it overlaps a little bit, and that makes some people nervous, but it makes it look more natural if it overlaps just a little bit. All right, and I'm putting that circle with chalk so you know where your petals are going to go to. And then I'm having a half of one, just a side view of one here. All right, so let's start with our 12 again. And I'm going to pick up a little bit of the Pueblo and wicker white, and I'm going to start working this in. But what I ended up doing was adding a dip of the apple red, but I really want it in between these two colors. This is my 12 flat, and I just got this shade that will make a nice shade that goes along with the red. Okay, so let's pick up our guide, and we're going to flip this over and look at the back side. So there's the half a flower I want to do, and here's a layered. We've got 1, 2, 3 layers. And it says it right there for you. And here's the loading spot, all right, to make sure we've got the color that was on the outside. All right, then we're gonna come back and look over here is the pink and red together, or we could still have the Pueblo in it and add some of the pink even. So, and then we'll end up with the yellow ochre and the moon yellow. All right, so what I wanna do while I've got this loaded on the brush is I want to practice this where I'm pushing down good and standing up. Pushing good and standing up. So it's kind of like the last ones we did for the outside row of petals, and we're going to make sure that you wipe off your guide as you go, because with the sealer then it will stay on there and we need to have it wiped. Okay, so now I'm going to pick up a little bit more. I need more paint. More paint, there we go. Okay, so we're going to go all the way around now, and I'm going to have the white on the outside. So I push it down and stand up, and I'm going to do my clock again, because that's going to help you each time feel comfortable with your layout. All right, so all in here and here, okay? Now I'm going to pick up, every time I went over there and picked up more paint, and sometimes I have to get all 3 colors again when I run out of it. But it's still better to mix it as we go, blend it on the brush as we go to have that consistent color, okay? So we are doing 2 in between each one of the 4 that we originally put in. So remember what I told you before, you want to push down, lots of pressure, and immediately lift as you're pulling in. So while I'm doing that one, I'm going to get more paint, and I want to come and add a little bit of the bud in there, which is going to be there. So as this makes it simpler, as if you, and have the same consistent color, as if you come here and stroke each layer, just like when we stroke this layer. And also, if this looks kind of see-through and not covering as well as you want, you can go back over it at that point too. I wouldn't go over it too much because the next layer is going to cover a lot of it. Okay, so now, next, I'm going to my red. So I'm just going to come here and pick up red, and I can go right back to my spot here. Let's just dip apple red. And dip. And remember, you can go practice this on the worksheet to make sure you're getting the right color. You're going to lay it on there, and you can do your stroke right there. So it helps you and comforts you about doing the stroke and feeling comfortable about doing it. All right, so I'm just going to come in between and lay this out again. So I'm comfortable with what I'm going to be doing each time. Now, I didn't clean that brush. Did you notice that? I just picked up the paint and went back. And I want to go ahead and put a few in here. Now, these are not as much pressure. Little bit, touch, lean, pull, touch, lean, pull. Say those little strokes to yourself, and it helps you. All right, so coming all the way around, and then we're going to add some yellow. So I'm going to wash the brush. This is the 12 flat. I'm washing it, and I don't want any of that other color. But when I went from Pueblo to white, and that Pueblo and white to the red, I did just leave the paint in there because it is a nice color that mixes with it well when you're layering it. But now I need yellow ochre and yellow, and I just need to flatten this. So I'm going to get a nice chisel, and I might want to even dip some white to make it bright. All right, so I'm going to come right in here and finish this up by holding the gold on the inside, the yellow ochre, and then the little teeny small strokes coming around. Now, I want to caution you on this. I want a big green center. So when you're doing your zinnias, I just love to go look in the garden or the little seed catalogs that show you how beautiful different zinnias look. All right, so you can just experiment with different colors that would make you happy. All right, so we're gonna leave that, and then we're gonna jump over here to this guy and come in here with some yellow. Now you can leave it right there, or you can come back. I wiped that off, picked up some red, and then had a few, because this is a side view, you would see the back and then some yellow and then red again. Okay, so I'm going to take a few minutes and I'm going to paint the rest of the same color flower that I've laid out in here. I'm going to do one here. I did a triangle where I went up here and down, and then I have another triangle if I did this one, and one up here. So that's what I'm going to lay out. Let me show you real quick how I would chalk that in. I would put the one out here. Okay, not too big. These are kind of medium. One up here, and then one over here. So always think, where's my triangle? And it just helps you to lay it out really easy. Because I want this to be your own freehand painting project. So it doesn't have to be exact like mine, but it makes it kind of fun to have little steps that help you figure it out. All right, so I'm going to start painting those, and we'll be back in a minute. All right, so I've added all those. I still have detail and all to put on them, but let's keep going with our flowers. I have a little hot pink one and a little yellow one I want together. So then I kind of splattered them in here a little, sprinkled them all in here. And so we've got one there, a couple little pink ones here. So I can even put a P in them to help me remember which ones are what. And because I like to put them in where I want them, draw them in where I want them, and then don't worry about it. So I just get my paint and I start and not think it out anymore after I've kind of planned it, okay? So I have a yellow one here, and then I did a pink and a yellow one here, okay? So let's take our 12. And one of the things I did with the pink is there's a couple of ways that you can do it. You can double load it with the white and the wicker white and the bright pink, all right? Or you can mostly paint it white and then go back and stroke that bright pink on top of it, which is actually what I did. As it went back again and added more pink to it. I should have one up here too, I noticed. So if I'm coming here, these are little short strokes, and I want to keep them skinny, thin, little petals. And see, this is this pink is a little bit transparent. So see, I might need to just come in and put more pink right on top. There you go. And so then we're going to put a bright center, and that's all they're going to need. So on this one, I don't worry as much about the clock, but if the clock makes it all easier for you, just go ahead and put your 12, 3, 6, and 9. But so I start out with the double loaded white and pink, and then the bright pink, and then I go around and keep adding bright pink afterwards. And you might find that it's better to let this dry and then go back and put pink. Okay, so they're little short strokes, and then these could actually have a dotted center, but I went ahead and put a little scruffy center in them anyway. So you can choose. I want you to make it creatively yours. Okay, all the way around. But remember, it's that push down, pull. All right, so I guess I only put a few yellow ones. I was thinking I put a lot more yellow ones, but they're just a few X's because we already had yellow in here. Does that make sense to you? I had enough yellow on these large flowers that it balanced my yellow. Okay, so I'm going to have a yellow one here and a yellow one there, so let's put one more pink one over here and then one in the other corner. Just go over that just a little bit. Over here. This one I got a little big, so I'm going to keep it inside that circle. Okay, so like I said, when those will dry, you might want to put a heavier coat on it, just one more solid pink coat on it. All right, so now I'm going to do my yellow, and I just have like 3 at the top to balance out. See, we're going to pick up those 2 colors. Yellow ochre and moon yellow on the 12. All right, so let's go way up here and do this one. Now, I also want a bigger center, and I want this to be held out all the way out here a little bit. So I want the tips to look really good. Just think about that. If the tip of these petals look good, and then we scruffy in the middle, it will look nice. One up here. See how I'm outside over the white chalk? And every time I'm going to my palette, my double loader, I am mostly picking up the moon yellow. Pull, 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 pull. And so they're just nice little bright baby zinnias. Okay? So now we've got all the flowers in. And next thing I want to do, let's go ahead and put some centers so we can start filling the pretty flowers. I can still put my centers on the pink ones and not worry about it, because you can always go in and put the pink afterwards and not touch the middle. All right, so I'm going to fluff my little scruffy. All right, this is my quarter scruffy. And I'm going to take and fluff it. Looks like we're wrecking it, but we're really just getting a nice round fluff. You're going to load this brush totally dry. We don't use any water on this brush or dampen it beforehand. And so I want to have this happy green. So I might, on a small scruffy, pounce it all one color. Okay, I can dip a little, I'm not dipping, I'm tapping. I can tap a teeny bit of white on one edge. It's like an oval, so the top edge may be white, but I want some of the sap green on one little end of this oval, okay? Now what I'm gonna do is, as I'm going in, let's look at this flower first because you can see it better. I'm gonna pounce with the dark on the outside bottom edge, and I'm kind of turning the brush, and I've got the light on the top, okay? Now I might wanna get brighter on some of those, but that's kind of what I do. I'm keeping the dark down on the bottom side. I'm gonna keep coming over and repouncing. I pounce on my palette and I pounce on the flower. No dipping. And lots of people painters want to go jab, jab. We don't want to do that either. We're pouncing. Okay, and then I'll come back later and put a little bit of white if we need it. But see how it's so bright? It brightens up the whole flower. So see, I'm turning it like this as I'm pouncing, so that the green goes at the bottom. The dark sap green goes at the bottom. All right, let's come way up here. And this one I definitely need some white because he's looking pretty dark up here. All right, all the way around, there we go. So look, I can tap some white there, a little bit of white. See how that brightens it? Okay, more paint. You're gonna love this little scruffy because it's more compact and it goes right where you want it to in a small area. Okay, so then when I did the little guys, I just barely pounced them. Oops, I put gold in those. Well, see, you could put green too. Either one. But I'm gonna come back and put gold in there. Okay, now I've got to wash out this scruffy brush, which means it's gonna be wet and I don't want it wet. So what I wanna do is I put it in the paper towel and I pinch the ferrule, the silver part of the brush. I pinch it to get the water. That's where the water is going to really stay. And then I fluff it, and then I'm ready to use it. So I need to change the color on that yellow. What I used was a little bit of yellow ochre, and I had it darker because I'm going to go around the edge with some white little dots. So see, you can't really see much there, but I want a little bit of scruffy. So I think I'm gonna use a teeny bit of Pueblo to get my darker part. There you go, that looks better. Okay? Okay, so what I wanna do is look at the different options I have for leaves. I have some stems that I put up, these tall stems, and I want to put some little slider leaves along there. And I did some different colors, fresh growth, and some have been there a while. I also have these fun ones that you push and pull, that kind of little fern type greenery, and those are really light with white and a happy green. And then I'm gonna add some stems right here that on those added stems, we're gonna put berries. So, and I also put some bright green berries along some of these, all right? So some of these little stems that are growing. So let's get started. I'm gonna use the happy green and sap green, and I'm gonna go between the two, and I'm gonna work it in. Now let me tell you a little trick here. One of the things that I do, a little hint, is that I take a 12 or smaller. So 12, you could go either way. I take those brushes and I load them with one color and side load a second color. But this is a 12 that I can still pick up. I can also grab some white. So I will show you when I do the 10 flat, because we're gonna use a 10 flat also. I'll show you how I side load that one, okay? So now we're ready. And I'm gonna do these little guys first. And I practice on here, so you wanna practice laying them on here and see how that is. Make sure your color's good. But also the centers are on your worksheet too. I went right past that, and I just want you to know that they're there. So I'm going to go on each side. I'm going to touch the stem, lean forward, and slide. And I get smaller as I get to the tip. All right? So I can then get some darker and then pass that little flower and go on up. All right, and then I could add a little bit more white even. And see how I'm sliding, touch, lean, slide, slide. And I can pull a stem in there. And then all those, guys, I'm just gonna take the handle of my brush and do dip dots. And I can do about 3 or 4 little dots. And those are berries that haven't turned any color yet, or they might stay that color. I just thought those would be fun to add in here. I'm going to take the 10 flat and get all happy green, and then I want to side load the white. All right, so happy green, side load. See, you want to be on the side of that. All right, and let's lay this over here. Then what we're going to do is I put these in quite a few different places where I've just pushed and pulled, and it's not showing up quite as good on top of this light area, but that's okay. I still like it to be there. And I come later and put a stem in there. But when you get over here to the darker area, you're going to pull, you have a stem, and you're going to pull these little guys, kind of like a comma. So push, pull, push, you're lifting and pulling at the same time. So I push down and I lift and pull it to the stem. Okay, so they're kind of, I use them like little ferns. All right, so I can come back later and put little green highlights in there, but I put them all over. So I have some up here. See, they kind of curve that way, and then I'll put little stems in them. But I'm going to do a really good version here so you can see this is what you would want them to do. You'd have 1, and then over here you do 1, 2, 3, 1, 1, 2, 3, and make it like a little group cluster of fern. And I continued those all around. But then I wanted to come in and take that 12 again, and let's just add a few of the filler leaves in here. So to do that, I'm going to do 1, and we're going to practice right here. So there we are. We got too much paint on my brush. So there's the one that you're going to practice, and you'd stroke it there and practice there, and that's going to help you feel comfortable doing that stroke. And you're going to wipe it off before you start painting so that you can come back to your guide again. All right, so I'm going to do 1, 2, 3. And always pull your stems into those. You can even put another one up here. And I kind of alternate picking up the bright, happy green or the sap green more. All right, so in between those fun little clusters of fern with your 10, I'm putting more of these little guys. Sometimes I want it really dark so they show better. Sometimes I want them lighter. Oops, always go in. And we're going to put a couple up here. So I'm going to keep filling those in. And I want to show you the little berries. So for those berries, I come here and there, and I put these little curvy stems. I'm just going to show you a couple of those. I even have some of them trailing down in here with a lot of that light green. All right, so with those, I'm using the handle of a smaller brush, and I'm doing the dip dot with the moon yellow. And these don't have any leaves on it. It's just clusters of those. but every once in a while I dipped white. So it's moon yellow and white, wicker white. And we're gonna fill some of those in. And I might come in there and just do a few white and then add some yellow, the moon yellow. Try to stay on the end and it's gotta not be partially dry, it's gotta be fresh dip dots when you do those. So I'm going to finish that up and show you in a minute, but right now I'd like to go to these finished centers. Let's look down here because I can show you each one down here. I'm going to do those centers, but I forgot this little guy here. So see, you want to attach the half one, and you also want to go over here to these little guys and have a stem, and look, you can grab it and pull each little leaf down, and it gives it accent. You don't have to do that, but I like it. I like the look it gives you. All right, so one of the things I do to these little flowers is I shaded with floating medium. So I used up all my medium. I mean, cleaned up my medium, so I'm gonna put a little bit more down in here. All right, so I'm gonna load the whole 12 brush, bigger brush than you think, all medium. And then I'm gonna side load, let's side load a little bit of red, apple red. See that, just a little bit. And some of them I did yellow ochre, and I've done different colors. But look, I'm gonna come around here and float this around the center, and it's just gonna add another dimension. All right, so see that side's good. And see, I went a little bit too much on this side, so you just come back with your medium corner of that brush and wipe it off a little bit. And so that gives it a little bit more detail on some of the ones that you feel like you need more. I put some yellow ochre in some of these that are got a lot of yellow. Okay, so look, we just come around with extra yellow ochre, and it just makes it a little more depth. Or you can even use Pueblo. So the last thing I wanted to show you before I go back and do some completing this, or we can go back at close-up and look at our finished piece, is that I came around these little guys and put little dots with my one script liner. Instead of the handle of the brush, I put a little dot with this. And then what I did with these guys way up here, I did the little bit of white, and this has to be all the way around really close so that you're gonna get a whole different look than if you do some of the other looks that we did on the other flowers. So isn't that fun? Just really quick and easy. Just a few little details make a big difference. So what I'd love to do is see what you end up doing and have you guys share it with me so that I can see it on the Let's Paint Facebook group. But what I'd like to do is go back over this one really quick and see all the little detail I added. See, this one's got yellow ochre and then some little red dots. So this has got yellow ochre. These just have the little white. So it's just lots of these little pieces of fern make a big difference. See, especially when they're on dark areas, but you can put them on top of leaves too, the darker leaves, and it makes it really yummy. And this completes our zinnia lesson. Thanks for joining me in the lesson today. Weren't those zinnias fun to paint? I'd like to also invite you to our Let's Paint community, which is so much fun because you take your pictures and you share them on our Let's Paint with Plaid Facebook group. So come join me next month for another Wreath of the Month lesson.